Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to another week of Intro to iOS. This week I will be guest lecturing on SwiftUI, widgets, and user defaults. So to start off with introductions, I'm Yan Lum, a junior studying CS in the College of Engineering, and I've been in app dev since my freshman year, spring 2019. And I've worked on iOS, Android, and web projects within app dev. And so I'll be one of the course instructors this next spring. And yeah, so just to start off, I'm just going to show a demo of what the kind of expected result for this lecture is. So basically you'll have like a small widget and a medium-sized widget, with the small widget changing to a random snowman every second, and then the medium widget, which you can configure within the app to be whichever snowman you want it to be, and then it'll kind of change on the widget itself. Alright, so let's go through what SwiftUI is first, since the entire app and widgets are going to be coded with SwiftUI. So what is SwiftUI? It's a simpler way to build interfaces, and it uses alignment instead of layout constraints. So instead of having to specify like the bottom or top anchor and all of those constraints where if you miss one, sometimes your view doesn't show, it'll actually give you like a default alignment, and then if you want to align it differently, you can add that on to specify. And it also uses declarative syntax and allows chaining for customization. So what it'll look like is something like this, where you don't have to really instantiate anything. You basically lay it out almost similar to HTML, and a lot of the views that you create come with default stylings, and you can customize them if you want to, but you don't have to. So let's start with a demo. There's no starter code, so if you just go to Xcode, you can just file, new, create project as usual. I'm going to call this demo just because, and then save it to my desktop. And just wait for it. And so within like a new SwiftUI project, you'll see that there's a demo app and a content view. And this is really similar to like standard UI kit Swift syntax, where demo app is kind of where the app's starting point is. You'll see like there's the app here and then the scene, and within the window it'll call on the content view, which you guys know as kind of like the view controller, which is here. So if we play this, we'll see here that we get an app that just says hello world. So what we want to be making is this snowman app, where when you have like these 7 buttons and you click one of them, it'll change to the snowman that's associated with that number. So first off, I am going to move this window here, all right, and then drag and drop some images into assets. All right, so here are my snowmen, 1 through 7. It's gonna put them in our assets as usual. And then we're going to create the text here, the buttons, and have our image, which shows the snowman depending on which number is clicked. And so within our content view, let's start off with altering the text to be snowman and then some number, which we're just gonna call snowman. So outside, we'll just create a variable snowman and equals to 1. All right, and then similar to what the slides showed before, there was, here we go, there was a list, an image, and a VStack. And so a list will iterate through the list of like a list. similar to a loop. And the VStack will align elements vertically, and there will also be HStack for horizontal and ZStack for by layer. Yeah, so if we just go back to the code, let's use a VStack for this and align them to the leading anchor and move our text in here. And then for our text, we want to make it larger and also have this cool gradient behind it, and also have it be white so it shows up nicely. So for that, you can set the foreground color to .white. You can set the background to linear gradient, and make a gradient with the colors blue and gray just to make it a bit wintry. And then have the start point be the leading up to the trailing anchor, which kind of specifies where the colors come and go to. Yeah, and then afterwards we also want to make the font a bit bigger. So what's cool about SwiftUI is that there are a bunch of options for what you want the font to be like, and so we can just specify it to be a large title. And so after the text, let's make the buttons 1 through 7. So for the buttons, you can just like add a bunch of buttons and make like an H stack, but I'm going to be using a for loop inside the H stack. So let's make a list of snowmen first, and since it's numbered 1 through 7, I want to make some kind of struct for the snowmen, give them an ID with like a string and then number int, and then we'll have a list here. Let snowman, alright, snowman equals to snowman. Just make a bunch of snowman objects. One through 7. I'm just gonna Control V and Control C and then Control V until we get 7 of those. Just update the IDs. Yeah, I can count. Nice. Alright, so yeah, I'm just gonna do this, and then to align the buttons horizontally, we're going to be using an H stack, and let's just align them to their centers and have some 10 spacing. And then for the content, we're going to make the buttons, and to do that, we're going to use a for each loop. And within our for each loop, we're going to pass in the snowmen, and then for each of the snowmen, we're going to create a button where the title will be the snowman's number, and then the action will be setting the snowman variable up here to be whatever the number is. So then, alright, so self is immutable. So this is basically saying that this variable can't be changed since it's being used within this button view, and to change this we can use an at state, which is saying that this variable is part of the view's state, and if it changes then the view should be updated. So then for the for each loop, we're getting this error here where snowman has to conform to identifiable, so we actually have to pass in an ID here, and that will be the snowman's ID field up here, so we can use the \dot syntax for that. So if we play this, we'll see that we have the numbers 1 through 7 down here. And lastly, we're going to add the image for a snowman that we want to update. So to do that, just going to make an image, and the name is similar to how UI images have their names. We want it to match the asset. So for string, I'm just going to pass in snowman and then the snowman number. And then for the image, similar to how with UI images, you can scale it to fill or fit. We're going to make the image resizable and then scale to fit, or yeah, scale to fit. And then if we play this again, we'll see that the image and the title changes depending on which number we click on. However, the text and the image go all the way to the ends of the screen, and we don't really want that. So let's just add some padding, and to do that, we can just throw a dot padding right on the V stack, and there we go, some very easy, simple, Swifty padding. And so that's basically the rundown on SwiftUI. And next up, we'll be talking about widgets. All right, I'm back. Widgets, what are they and why do we use them? So widgets are a pretty recent update to iOS 1.14, which came out a couple of months ago. And so basically it allows us to create glanceable content to display on a home screen before opening our app. And if designed properly, this can be really useful to summarize content of your app or provide convenience by displaying relevant information. So the examples on the right we have our calendar and our weather app widgets, and these are both displaying information for the current day and current location, which is super, super convenient because we don't want to know what is happening yesterday or someday in the future. We want to know what's happening now. You know, we want to know if we have to grab an umbrella for the rain, or we have to dress with like a long winter coat because it's snowing outside. In Ithaca weather, you know, just Ithaca weather, you can never predict it. But yeah, so how do we create these widgets? So widgets have two kinds of configurations, static and intent configurations. Static configurations allows for widgets with no user configurable properties. And this is if you are fetching something with a URL or a backend and you just want to display the content from retrieving that data, or you are fetching something from UserDefaults, which we will be doing, then you can use static configuration. But for intent, if you have some user configurable properties and you need to use a SiriKit intent or something to specify a zip code for a package address, then you will be using an intent configuration. So a bit more about static configurations, because that's what we'll be using for our demo. There are two parameters, kind and provider. So what kind is a string identifier for the widget, similar to reuse identifiers for table view cells and collection view cells. And so usually you just have to make a string that kind of defines what the widget you are going to be creating is going to be for. There's nothing really special about it. It should just be descriptive. And then the provider provides a timeline of information telling the widget when to update, and also gives the widget information as to what it should display. So for the provider, a bit more about that, you'll have to override three functions: placeholder, get snapshot, and get timeline. And this is all the ways of how a widget will be retrieving data. It'll start off with the placeholder data when it first shows up. And it's kind of like a loading screen in a way. Like before you retrieve actual data, you'll have to use placeholder data to show like what you want on your widget. And then get snapshot will be like the first instance of the data that you'll be displaying, and then get timeline will give you a list of data with certain dates where when a certain date is met, maybe like 1 second into the future and 1 minute into the future, then the widget will update with that data. So here is a bit of a visual as to how the timeline looks like. You'll first reload the timeline and you'll create a list of timeline objects. And for each of those timeline objects, it will have a date and extra data like an image name or something that is provided within the timeline. And whenever the date is met, the widget will re-render with the new timeline object. And so that is what the render widget for now, 1 hour, 2 hours, and 3 hours are on the left of the graph. And then once everything, once all the list elements are used up, then it will refresh with the dot at end, or it will refresh if you give it a date, if you use dot after, or it'll just never refresh. And then this refresh is telling it when it should retrieve a new timeline. So it'll just keep cycling back and forth between getting a new timeline and updating the widget until it's told not to get a new timeline. So back to our widget. So we talked about the static configuration, the kind, and the provider. And so there's actually this completion with the entry in demo entry view. And this allows the widget to know what it should display. It will call the view that the widget should show, and in this case it is the demo entry view, and then configuration, display name, and description at the end specify what you want the extra information to say within the widget gallery. So, demo time. So to create a widget, we're going to go to File, New, and add a target. And within our targets, we'll see that there are a bunch of different extensions that you can add. And what we're going to be using is the widget extension. And so I'm just going to name it Demo again. Yeah, and then Finish. And then you just click Activate, and then we'll see down here that we have kind of like a framework for the widget. So if we just click Play for now, we'll see here that there's a simple widget for the demo app. If you click it, you'll go into the snowmen, and then all it really displays is the time of the launch, and that is what the completion here is for. It'll take the date that is created within this entry from the get snapshot, or whenever it updates within the timeline, it'll take the date from here, and it will pass it into the demo entry view and render it as the text. And so if you go into the widget gallery, you'll see here that this is not the right app. All right, we go into the widget gallery and we go to demo. We'll see here that the title and the description here are my widget, and this is an example widget. And so we can change this here to snowmen and happy holidays. And that is going to update the information that is shown within the widget gallery. And the widgets also default to having 3 different sizes, a small, medium, and large. You can restrict this with .supported families and then change it to .system small, large, or medium, or whichever ones you want it to work with. So let's do .system small, and we'll just show that for now, and then we will delete that later. But if you just set it to .system small and then click on demo, you'll see that there is only one size for widget to be added. So you can also customize the different sizes of widgets by using an environment variable called widget family. So to do that, we just do @environment and get the widget family and store it in some variable called size. So when you do this, within your body, you can render the view based on the size. So let's just switch size. And there are 3 cases, like as shown before: case system small, medium, and large. And we generally just want to add a default just in case Apple decides to create new sizes in the future. And for that, let's just keep it to what we have. But for small, medium, and large, let's show the different sizes within the text. All right, so let's play this again. And we'll see here, by switching the sizes, we can customize each widget by their size. All right, so let's start off with making the flashing snowmen, updating randomly every second with the timestamp, the date, and a simple line. So for that, we're going to be updating the system small widget, and to do that, we have the image on the bottom with some kind of overlay to darken it with the text on top. So we will be using a Z-stack and aligning our content by the center. And so within the Z-stack, we will have the image and then a V-stack with the text. So let's start off with the image and just have snowman1 as a placeholder for now, and then give it a resizable and change it to scale to fill. And then we'll see that the text we want is going to be aligned vertically, but we also want it to overlay on top of the image. So we can add a V-stack within, align them by center, and add the text here. So let's have the time, and then the date, and we can customize the text again with .font to be .large title, and then caption. All right, so then the small line on the bottom is actually a rectangle, so let's just add that with rectangle, and then foreground color, white, which we should also make the text. And then we're going to give it a frame to specify its width and height. So the width, we will be making it 50, and then height will be 1, and it won't have an alignment. All right. Okay, so then we have our image and our VStack. So if we play this now, all right. We will see that it's not using the images because the assets here are separate from the assets for the widget, which is why we have to copy them over. And actually replay this. All right, there you go. So right now it's a bit hard to see the text because of the light image, and so to create an overlay we can actually use container relative shape, which will take the shape of the Z stack from the parent element and give it a fill. Make that black. And an opacity. And that will just allow you to see the text more clearly. And so that's what we have. So right now we're just using a snowman 1 as our image, but we want it to flash. And so for that, we'll have to update our timeline and the data that is stored within our timeline entries. So right now we just have a date which specifies when we should get a new date, which will update the time and the date. However, it will not be updating our image. So let's store an int in this and call it number. Actually, let's just call an image and make it a string. And so for that, we'll have to add another parameter into all of these. And so for our default, let's just use snowman 1. And we'll see here that instead of using snowman 1 as a constant within the image here, we can actually specify entry.image because each entry will now have a date and an image. So in order to generate a timeline that fetches a new snowman each second, we'll have to change the update times from being by the hour to by the second. So let's actually call this offset and add a second instead of an hour. Okay. And then we want our image to be different randomly. So let's actually use int.random in range 1 to 8. 1 to 8. And that will give you a number from 1 to 7 because of the less than randomly, and then that will generate the snowman randomly. All right, try playing that again. All right. So there we have it, flashing snowmen. And so now that we have our small widget, let's go on and make this medium widget that will be using user defaults to save which image should be on the widget. So cue slides. user defaults, which have been referenced to as persistence in past lectures, and that's still the same. It is a way for you to persist data on your app. So that means if you close your app entirely, it is able to save information. That way, when you relaunch the app, it can display that information. So what are user defaults exactly? It is a plist file in your app's package, which allows you to set and get pieces of data within your phone. It's structured like a dictionary or a JSON file with key value mappings. And this is really important because you can store small pieces of information like Boolean strings and ints this way without having to build and deploy a backend database. And examples include like setting light and dark modes, or like setting like your user preferences for fonts or other things within your settings. So setting and getting from user defaults, similar to past lectures, you can use userdefaults.standard.set for setting information, and then there are different ways to get information, with .object being like what is normally used if you don't know what the type of the value is associated with the key. But if you know that it will be an integer, a Boolean, or string, you can use .integer, .bool, or .string. Like for example, if you were setting a person's age and getting a person's age, you would know it's an integer, and then you can set and get with an integer. And that will cast the types for you. If you use .object, you'll actually have to cast whatever object you get with like the key to the type that you want it to be. All right, so what is the problem with userdefaults.standard? So with widgets, the userdefaults.standard is actually different for the app and the widget. So if you try to set your age within your app and you want your widget to be able to retrieve the value associated with the key age from your app and display that, you won't be able to. It will retrieve nil. So you will have to synchronize the information by creating an app group. So this will change your previous code to look something like this, where you have some sort of string for the app group and you pass it in as a suite name. And this just allows your app and your widget to be able to use the same user default information. All right, back to the demo. All right, so let's first create the app group for our app and widget. And so to do that, we just go into signing and capabilities here, click on add capability, app group, and then we're going to add an app group, right? And I'm going to use the bundle identifier, but really what you just want is some string or like some name that is unique to like the group you're going to be making, but you want to keep it consistent between your app and your widget. I'm just going to add that there. And we'll see on the left here that we're actually in the targets for our demo iOS app. So we also have to add the same app group to our demo extension, which is our widget. So again, it's add capability, app group, add, and name it the same thing. And so once we have that, we are going to make a Swift file. I want this to be global so we can use it within our app and within our widget. So let's just name it global. And for this, over on the right where it says target membership, we'll have to be sure to also add a target for demo extension. That way our widget can call the functions that are declared within this file. So for our global file, let's create a struct. And inside we want functions to get and set our snowman. to user defaults and from user defaults. So static func get snowman, and this is going to retrieve an int from our user defaults. So let's just return user defaults, suite name dot object for key, and then as mentioned before, we'll actually have to cast this to an int and give it some value if none is found within our user defaults. So for our suite name and our key, I'm going to make constants up here or app group.com. And then let's call our snowman key snowman. All right. And then we'll just use those variables within here. So this will retrieve our snowman from user defaults and return that. And then we'll also need a function to set our snowman. And this will have to take in an int. That way we can set within user defaults. And then using the same key. And so after we've set our snowman within user defaults, we'll want to use this within our app. So let's use our global dot get snowman for our snowman within our content view, and then that will allow us to retrieve snowman from user defaults and update the image here. But then when a button is pressed, we want to set the snowman, so we'll have to call global.setSnowman and pass it in our s.number. So if we play this, all right, we'll see that when we're in here, we can click on whatever snowman we want. So snowman 5. We can close the app and then reopen, and we'll end up on snowman 5, or if we change it to snowman 3. This always happens to me. All right, there we go. Then it will persist and display snowman 3. So now we want to do the same thing with user defaults to be able to show the image on the widget, and to do that we'll just create a variable here, state var snowman equals to global dot get snowman, and put an image within our medium-sized widget and just have this be our image name. All right, so then if we play this, we'll see that the widget uses the image that we want it to use. However, if you click on a button within the app and then you go back to your home screen, it's not going to automatically update your widget. So what you want to do to fix this is go back to your global file, and when you set your snowman, you'll have to call the widget center, which is not auto-completing because we have to import widget kit. All right, so widget center dot shared dot reload all timelines, and this will automatically update your widgets for you when you click a button and update the user defaults. All right, there you go. Then you click 2 and you go back to your home page, and it'll change to the different snowman. So yeah, that's basically all there is to this demo. Let's go back to these slides, see what's next. action items. So midpoint submissions are due tomorrow, Tuesday, December 8th. And as a reminder, there are 2 requirements: to have some sort of navigation interaction and a UI collection view or a UI table view. And it's okay to have hard-coded data at this point, but we just want to make sure that you are all making progress. And so yeah, I hope you guys had fun. See you guys at the hack challenge, and really excited to see the projects.